Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Ichigo Awakens in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 21, Grudges of the Past. With Yuki. She watched in shock as the fire burst out of the 1st Division barracks. Ichigo went inside and the entire building disappeared for a few minutes. Now an explosion tore most of the building apart as Ichigo fled. She saw the captain commander pointing towards the boy as 10 pink lights appear around him and fire towards the hybrid. Ichigo shot off several bursts of energy at the Kido spell as they converged on him. He missed 3 as the bolts exploded on the speed clone he left behind, but was still consumed in the explosion. No! She mentally screamed, turning back into her human state and leaping into the explosion. It was already weakening when she found him, charred, bloodied, what remained of his clothes in tatters, leaving only his hakama pants. He coughed up blood and she doubled her efforts, managing to get him out of harm's way. His pulse is just barely there. She analyzed, examining what she could. Shattered ribs, internal bleeding, smoke inhalation. The old man did a number on you. I need to work fast. She carried Ichigo off in a flash step, relying on the remains of the smoke and light to cover their escape, heading straight for an old hideout of hers. Genryusai slowly stepped out of the fire just in time to see the two vanish. Foolish boy! He muttered before expelling the tower of flames. At the repentance cell. Here it is. Hanataro said as the trio approached the towering prison cell. The repentance cell? They slowly crossed the bridge, Ganju slowing down step by step. Just beyond that door is that bitch Soul Reaper that killed my brother, Ganju thought as he felt his anger boil. Sis said that he was infected by a hollow and she had to do it. She had to do it. He repeated that mantra in his mind, halfway between rational and irrational thought. He now knows the truth, but he's held this hate for so long. Halt! 2 guards ahead yelled out as they crossed their staffs, denying passage to anyone who came by. Turn back or dash. Shut up already! Renji yelled out, getting ahead of the rest. Look, he has some business to settle with the prisoner, so let him through. He ordered of the guards, who stiffly returned to attention, sweating nervously in fear of their superior. Be but lieutenant. They attempted before the redhead's glare silenced them. Understood, sir. They squeaked before opening up the gate. As the door finally opened, the guards separated to allow Ganju passage into the tower. The moment he saw her, he felt like that small brat on that cold rainy day. The day when she appeared, coated in her victim's blood with blade and corpse in hand. Cold lifeless eyes that haunted his nightmares for weeks. He couldn't move, nothing registered as the shock of finally confronting his brother's killer froze him. Are you one of Ichigo's friends? She asked in surprise. Her voice managing to snap him out of his trance. Wait, that symbol? Rukia murmured, seeing the design on his pants legs. The explosive swirl of dissension. A symbol she knew well, the symbol of her mentor's family. You're a member of the Shiba clan. I haven't forgotten you, Rukia Kukaki. He said coldly. I still remember you dragging my brother's body to my home. You claiming you killed him. She closed her eyes, remembering her old shame. Yes. I killed your brother, Kyan Shiba. She admitted. He hated this girl, hated this Shinigami. He may now know the reason, but that didn't quell the years of resentment he had for her. He ran out to her and grabbed her prisoner's garments. Hanataro and the guards nearly bolted inside to restrain the man, but Renji stopped them. He recognized the look in Ganju's eyes, someone confronting a dark past. Go ahead. You have every right to take my life. She said, completely resigned, ready to lose her life. That just pissed off the Shiba man even more. Why? He growled out, feeling the barest hint of restraint holding him back from cutting her throat. Why did you kill my brother? He decided that her answer would settle this. They said he was fighting a hollow, but he died by a sword and you claimed to be his killer. Why? He demanded again. He saw the look in her eyes. The dead guilt in her, covered by a robotic mask, and completely resigned to her eventual death for her perceived crimes. He wanted haughty, he wanted condescending, he wanted something other than her own guilt over what happened. There was nothing for him to be angry at. I had to. It was my duty. she said, in the same cold dead tone she used when she first said, "I killed him." "You're pathetic," he said, releasing the petite prisoner. "This is the Soul Reaper that killed my brother," he said, looking at her with disappointment. "This is the protégé he took under his wing. Just a scared girl running from her guilt," he said, shocking Rukia. She was accepting her death sentence. How was this running from her guilt? "You don't even have the decency to confront the family of the man you murdered. You just delivered his body and left," he said, a mirthless chuckle escaping him. "My brother was a proud and strong Shinigami. There had to be more than simply, 'I killed him.' But nope, you just said that and left." He turned to leave. "A sad excuse of a Soul Reaper, as a member of my brother's squad, and of the Kukaki family. Even Byakuya would have had the decency to face the grieving family. But you just wallow in your own guilt." He looked over his shoulder at the shaken girl. "Ichigo's a better Shinigami, and a better person. Why he's trying to save you is beyond me." He left the tower, returning to his companions. "That was a little harsh," Renji said to the thug, feeling a little angry at the way the man treated his friend. "I thought Rukia told the Shibas what happened." Apparently she didn't. They heard the stoic calm tone that could only come from one person. Byakuya Kukaka was standing right in front of them. "My apologies, man of the Shiba clan," he said, one noble to another, even if he was from a disgraced family. "I should have gone with Captain Yukatake when he was paying your family a visit. Had I known she was acting so disgracefully, I would have acted sooner. It's not your cross to bear, Kukaki," Genju said, slightly intimidated by the powerful man. It was her as a person. Nevertheless, she was a representative of the clan and has acted shamefully. The noble said as he walked to his condemned sister. "Rukia, you will be executed in 3 days' time with the harshest punishment of Soul Society, the Sokyoku," he announced, causing everyone to freeze. "And Ichigo Kurosaki has been designated as kill on sight," he said, remembering the announcement after the chaos settled at the 1st Division. "Ichigo Kurosaki has admitted his collaboration with traitors of the Godi I-13 who are suspect with the desire to destroy Soul Society," he said, resigned that his sister was now doomed and accepted her fate. He swore to uphold the law and at that moment he vowed to kill Ichigo himself. Squad 13 Barracks, Yukatake and Kiraku. "So Captain Aizen is dead, Kenpeiga was defeated, and even Master has acted," the sickly white-haired captain said from his bed. He had recently woken up as the announcement made its rounds to the various captains. He got the report from his old-time friend just as the messenger showed up. The two were currently having more tea, something easier of the ill man. "Yeah, things are really getting hectic around here, Juashiro," Kiraku said, taking a drink of his tea while wishing it was sake. "We managed to capture 3 of the Ryokan now, and that's because they turned themselves in. They also vouched that Ichigo would not kill unless necessary, but witnesses saw that Ichigo went after Aizen with the intent to kill and admitted that he had to do it. And Master gave 3 days till Rukia is executed." Yukatake lamented. "Shame, she was a good one. I was really hoping Ichigo could save her." He felt his old friend place a hand on his shoulder and something fell into his shiakusho. "This has been the way of things for centuries, Yukatake. The old man is stubborn and Ichigo turned out to be no different than Jinjo Kyujo," Kiraku said, raising from his seat. "I'm going to try to appeal for a pardon on the rest of the Ryoka. Maybe we can still save some innocent lives," he said, leaving the captain of the 13th to his thoughts. After a few minutes and a quick scan to make sure he was isolated, he reached for what Kiraku dropped into his clothes. It was a small note, with a very risky plan. "This is an insane gamble," he said, steeling himself to do what he believed in. "But I'll do it." Squad 6 Barracks. To everyone else, it was a display of immaculate skill and control. Every swing of his blade sung in harmony with his movements, the perfect show of his years of training that was expected of one of his status. To a scarce few, they could tell he was distracted, furious. Barest traces of hesitation, too much force in some attacks, some unnecessary movements to his motions. Renji was basing it off a hunch, from his experience as one of the members of the 11th squad. Being among them gave some good insight of the moods of men. "Everything all right, sir?" he bravely inquired, prompting Byakuya to nearly impale his lieutenant in the throat. Renji was sweating bullets from his near brush with death by careless idiocy. "Renji," the captain responded, as calm as ever. "You should be more careful when approaching me during practice." Almost as if he was conversing about the weather instead of nearly dealing a life-threatening injury. "Why yeah," Renji stuttered, trying to calm down from the event. "I'm just a tad concerned, sir. I've been your lieutenant for over a month and this is the first time I've seen you so agitated." The captain turned to the redhead and analyzed the man. He's always been sure to control his emotions, but apparently Renji saw through some cracks. "I'm going to speak plainly with you, Renji. I was hoping that Ichigo Kurosaki would save Rukia," the man said, surprising his second in command. "Just like the head captain, I hold the law and peace in high regard. If someone like me ignores it, then no one else will obey it. In my life, I've broken the law twice. When I married my wife, Hisuna, and when I adopted her sister into the clan," he admitted to Renji. "You're married?" the tattooed man asked. "Rukia's your sister-in-law?" "Yes," Byakuya said, as calm as ever with melancholy lacing his tone. "I was. She died 5 years into our marriage and begged me to find and protect Rukia. After that I swore to never break the law again." There was a popping and stretching as the cold noble clenched his fist. "I am conflicted, Renji. I must sacrifice one vow to keep the other. Ichigo was my last hope for Rukia's salvation. He would come, plead her case, and would spare Rukia her condemnation while taking a reasonable burden. A seal on his powers maybe, but that is now impossible," he said, letting more of his emotions slip out, even if it was just a little more. "Rukia and Ichigo Kurosaki have been ordered to die." He raised his blade to look into his own eyes, steeling his resolve. "I will kill Ichigo Kurosaki with my own hands for this, Renji." Renji recognized the sense of resolve and determination, feeling it once before with Ichigo himself. That was the pivotal moment for Renji. He needed to do something. He had a gut feeling that Ichigo would still save Rukia, but if he was going to have any part in it, then he would need to be stronger. "Captain," Renji called out while manifesting his Zanpakuto spirit. "I've been training to achieve Bankai. Can you help me, sir?" he requested, staying vague about his own intentions. Byakuya looked to his lieutenant and felt a sense of pride in his lieutenant. "Very well, Renji," he said as they made their way to a more open training ground. He felt no need to train himself more than necessary. Ichigo killed a peaceful man and fought a brute to a standstill while relying on forbidden powers. He would not survive their fight, not when the captain intends to kill him. What progress could the boy make in such a short time anyway? Training grounds underneath Sokioku Hill. Yuriyuki sat patiently, holding a tube that extended into the steaming spring below. The healing spring that Kisuke created there many years ago to recover after harsh training sessions, where Ichigo now lay submerged and unconscious. After his fights and withstanding the power of the captain commander, Ichigo needed some fast recovery. His own accelerated healing, mixed with the power of the healing waters, patched up all his external injuries while his internal ones took some time. So here Yuriyuki sat with that tube in hand so Ichigo could breathe, waiting for a couple hours while her student recovered with a change of clothes, his sword, a bottle of water, and that reishi potion Kisuke made by her side. His eyes snapped open and his hands exploded from the water as he forced himself up. He stood upright and ripped his air tube out of his throat, releasing a few dry gasps and coughs as Yuriyuki gave him the water. The old man wasn't in a talking mood, she stated sarcastically as Ichigo drank the life-nourishing liquid, wetting his throat. Considering everything that had happened, it was lucky that it lasted as long as it did before Yamamoto tried to kill him. "Ah!" he exclaimed, finishing his drink. "Yeah, that could have gone better." He pulled himself out of the water and began stretching and popping his stiff joints. "What happened while I was out?" "Sato got arrested by Kiraku, Ganju turned himself into Byakuya, Rukia is to be executed in 3 days and you're public enemy number 1. She explained. "Urayu and Orium are still roaming about, but it's a matter of time at this point before they're found and captured. They might put up a fight if the odds are good enough. Then I have 3 days to prepare." Ichigo said, reaching for a sword that wasn't at his side. He finally examined his body and noticed something he should have realized sooner. Enjoying the show, Yuriyuki? Yes, I am. She said, unashamedly. Happy to hear. He said before flash stepping next to his clothes. But the show's over. He reached for his new clothes before Yuriyuki ran off with them. Come and get me. Training starts now. She yelled as she fled with his new Shiakusho. Ichigo had to spend the next few hours chasing the goddess of flash while naked. With Urayu and Orium. They kept at their mission, placing the tags while now making their way towards Sokioka Hill, where Yuriyuki said was a secret training ground that they would all meet up at. They disguised themselves as Soul Reapers as it was easier than constantly hiding from and dodging patrols. There was one close call with a guy attempting to hit on Orium, before she slapped him silly while stating she had a boyfriend. They managed to ditch the group and continued on their way to the secret training ground. They thought they had a lucky respite when darkness fell, until they were caught. Hey! Who are you? What division do you belong to? A Shinigami with a parted mustache and slicked back hair called out to them. We're with the Dash, Urayu started, trying to think of an appropriate squad, but without Zanpakuto their options were limited. They were given an overview on squad specialties just in case of a situation like this. The fourth. Orium called out. Our medical supplies ran out and we got a little lost. She said in her cutest, ditziest way. Could you point us back in the right direction? She asked with a smile as the man drew closer. Why, of course. He said in a sarcastic friendly tone. Just as soon as you tell me what self-respecting medic goes around without their med kit. He said before grabbing onto Orium's coat. And this symbol is the 12th dash. He was interrupted when Orium grabbed his wrist and elbow and twisted his arm so fast there was a sickening pop and he flipped onto his side. You can look but no touchy. She sang before kicking him across the face. Just then a group that was waiting made themselves known. Whoa, that was neat. One of the newcoming Shinigami said. Looks like we were unneeded after all. Don't let it bother ya, another one of them said, all these 11th squad guys are jerks. Us 12th division members need to stick together. They all started conversing rather happily while Urayu stayed in the back, feeling very suspicious about the whole thing. They show up out of nowhere, don't even ask questions. Subtly, he pulled out one of his silver seal Schneiders and looked into its reflective surface. Seeing a strange man about to push a button. Orium. Trap. He yelled out, warning Orium. Santen Kesshun. Suten Kishun. She called out near simultaneously, shooting up on a small barrier while trapping the Soul Reapers in her healing shield, just as they were exploding. My, Kuratsuki mused excitedly while analyzing the ability that saved his worthless subordinates. What an interesting power that girl possesses. The shield soon dissipated as the damage was undone. What happened? One of the guys asked. I can heal any injury. Orium declared, glaring at the captain just as Ishida stood between them. An ability to create a healing field and controlling barriers? How remarkable! The med scientist exclaimed in glee. How about becoming a subject of research, girl? He asked Orium, making offers of drugging and scans while trying to mutilate her as little as possible. That's an offer I never made before. He said, sounding genuine in his lack of morality. Complete lack of empathy and a Halloween fashion statement. Urayu thought as he recalled one person Urahara warned them about as a complete sadist. There's no way she's going anywhere with you, Mayuri Kuratsuki. Urayu growled, pointing his manifested bow at him. Oh? A Quincy? He said, mildly surprised. But I've no interest in your kind boy. I've already finished my studies of you. He released a bit of his spiritual pressure when a flash of light went across his face. He turned to see Urayu there, fingers steaming from a shot. He's definitely fast and seems unaffected by my riot, so. Urayu Ishida, I take it? The only other one among Urayuka that will fight captains. I am. He said before calling over to the others. Hey, you guys owe her your lives. Get her somewhere safe. He ordered, making the assembled Soul Reapers act and carry Orium away from the fight. I think not. Mayuri said, shooting his arm like a grappling hook's with it segmenting, showing the metallic cables within. His eyes grew in amazement as an orange light shot off from the girl and blew apart his entire arm to the shoulder before returning to its master. That was new, he noted, looking down at the remains of his limb. Been a while since this happened. He took out a small needle and injected himself with the fluid inside, making a new arm grow out grotesquely from his shoulder. Well, I think it's fair to assume I'll have to fight you first, Quincy, he asked, turning to the glaring Uriu. I figured. With Orium. I appreciate you guys trying to get me to safety, she said, dusting herself off. But I'd rather not be taken in by a bunch of forgettable no-rank Soul Reapers. No offense. She apologized to the unconscious heap of men that was her escort. Now where to go from here? How about with me, Oriaminu? The healer heard from behind. She turned to see a really tall silver-haired girl with a pair of thin braids, and a lieutenant's badge on her right arm. I'm Isane Katetsu, Squad 4 Lieutenant. Chapter 22, Confronting Demons. With Rukia. Night had fallen in the Soul Society. Now would be a time for rest, to slumber in peace for the duties of the next day. But the realm was still in turmoil. An endless search for the remaining Ryoka and the aftermath of Aizen's death still had the entire Seiriti in turmoil. A good comparison for the storm of emotions in Rukia's heart, the words of Ganju Shiba still ringing in her ears. You're pathetic. Every stinging statement was a tug of a knife in her heart. Just a scared girl running from her guilt. Why did she never tell the Shiba clan? They deserved to know the full story, but she left. Was she scared? Is this why she's so willing to accept the punishment of Soul Society? Was letting herself die really so much more difficult than facing the punishment from the Shiba clan? No, it didn't matter anymore. Her fate was sealed the moment Ichigo attacked the head captain. She failed everyone she cared about. There was no saving her now. Ichigo. She muttered, memories of their time together replaying in her head. The way he acted in the face of the overwhelming danger of the Hollows, the kindness he showed her during her time in the living world, the offer that Orium and Tatsuki left open. Would he even have me? She wondered, thinking back to the thoughts she had the first time she imagined being with Ichigo. She dropped to the floor, tears pouring from her face. Please. Just leave me behind. She cried out, feeling despair creep into her heart. Orium and Isane. The two stared at each other, trying to put up an intimidating front. One to rescue a friend and escape an unjust punishment while the other is the second in command of the healing squad. Both would rather not fight, but the other is leaving little recourse for that. They soon shifted into their respective fighting stances, one of martial arts and the other for sword play. Any chance you can let me through? Orium asked politely with a happy smile, hoping it would work. I don't like fighting too much. Neither do I. Isane replied. It's why I'm a medic. But I can't let you through. She then asked in a similar manner. Please come with me. They kept smiling before they turned serious and charged at each other. Isane swung her blade at Orium, who swiftly ducked under it to deliver a swift palm strike to her side. The tall woman staggered back a little and brought her blade down in another swing, making Orium jump back, but was caught by a rope of light. Bakudo number 4 Hainawa. Isane chanted, trapping Orium in her Kido. Surrender please. She asked again. Kouten Zanshun. Orium called out, having her attack destroy her bindings. Thanks Tsubaki. She said, bringing out all of her fairies. Let's do this. Her spirits started to fly around rapidly, putting the lieutenant on edge. Erring on the side of caution, she made a forward charge which was deflected by a barrier. You can't break through my barrier, Isane-san. Orium said politely, still trying to dissuade the fight. Isane disappeared in a burst of shunpo that Orium was not expecting. She turned just in time to see her opponent inside her guard, so she did something risky. With one hand she caught the hilt of the sword and the blade with the other, wincing as the metal cut into her hand. The shocked Isane, who was pulled off balance and elbowed in her chest and forced back with a kick. Then Orium took the time to realize how bad she hurt herself. Wah! My hand! She cried, in chibi mode with tears gushing out of her eyes. AHH! Don't worry. Isane called out. I am a medic, she said, taking Orium's hand into her own while applying a healing Kido. Repairing any major nerve damage, cuts to the bones. She muttered as she let the healer in her take the dominate role. There, just need a few stitches, and I'd advise against catching swords like that ever again. Don't worry. Orium chirped, the pain already gone. I've got this. Suten Kishun. She called out her healing shield and repaired the rest of her damaged hand. I could have fixed it myself, but thanks anyway, she said, happily showing off her fixed hand. Isane could only stare in shock at the display of healing. That was amazing. Then she started gushing over it, grabbing Orium's hand and examining it all over. No scarring, completely healed, and so smooth, she said, feeling out Orium's hand. So soft, so gentle. You're a natural healer. Whatever you did made it like your hand was never cut at all. Thanks, Orium said as they giggled for a few seconds. I feel like we're forgetting something. There was a pause before they remembered they were supposed to be fighting. After a quick shout of realization, they jumped back and returned to their respective fighting stances. Your power is impressive, Isane said. Time for me to reveal mine. Run Itagumo. She called out, making her sword create two smaller blades from the base at a 45-degree angle. With her new blade, Isane charged at Orium again by disappearing in a burst of shunpo, relying on speed to throw of the barrier maiden. Santen Kesshun. She called out, erecting her barrier to her back and having Tsubaki attack the lieutenant. The small fairy circled the tall medic, looking for a chance to attack or to create an opening for Orium. Either way was fine with him. He took a chance and charged through her guard, passing between two of the blades while Orium did the same. Tsubaki at her stomach and Orium punching her chest. Isane staggered and coughed painfully as the air was forced from her body. Sorry about this, but I need to find Ichigo, Orium said, raising her hand. Tsubaki, Kouten Zanshun. She called out, noticing her arm was bleeding again. She then realized that Tsubaki was moving very sluggish all of a sudden. That's my Zanpakuto, Itagumo's ability, Isane said, catching her breath. Anything caught in the field of my three blades becomes numb. You won't know if your life is in danger after a touch or cut of my blade. She spoke in a serious tone. It's really useful if you run out of anesthesia for field surgery. Plus it can reduce fevers and swelling with its cold aura, she said happily and proud. Wow. That sounds really useful, Orium said, genuinely impressed while she healed herself and Tsubaki. She saw the lieutenant tearing up before hugging her. Thank you so much, Isane cried out. I'm a poor fighter, so I rely on being faster than my opponent, but I just don't have any skill for it. I'm one of the weaker lieutenants. All I can really do is heal people. Orium felt sympathy for the silver-haired girl and returned her hug. There. Orium cooed, gently rocking the girl back and forth. I really don't like fighting either, and Tsubaki is my only real attack power, she said, before remembering something she was working on. Though there is this one move I've been experimenting with. You can tell everyone you pushed me to a last resort, she offered the lieutenant. Really? Isane asked, feeling hopeful that she'd get a more positive image with her colleagues. Yep. Watch. Orium let go of the girl and stepped back. She took a few breaths to center her focus and create the barrier she wanted. Shiten Koshun, she recited, making 4 of the sprites reconfigure into her normal shield, with Tsubaki in the center. My shield that reflects all attacks back to my opponent. She reached out her hand to grab something as the sprites began to shift in their places. The 3 points converged on each other while the top 2 tilted upwards to form a rough hilt while the center point extended to form a large blade shape. Kenten Koshun. My twin strike blade. She wrapped her hand around the hilt portion and swung her blade a few times to get used to it. It's a work in progress, she chirped and swung at Isane, who managed to block, and then both were shot back by the unexpected recoil. Definitely needs more work, Orium groaned. Yeah. Isane agreed as they got up for the next bout when a voice stopped them. Stop. It was stern but motherly. They looked behind them to see a serene and beautiful woman in a captain's haori with a long braid in front of her walking towards them. Captain Anohana. Isane whispered out as the two fighters dropped their stances. Guess this is it for our fight. Orium said, just before Anohana started to correct their stances for their respective fighting styles. Much better. Anohana said with a smile. Now continue. She said, surprising them. When they looked at her with the unasked question, she responded. You two started this fight, you finish it. I'll step in if it starts to get dangerous. She said while other members of her squad went about gathering the people Orium knocked unconscious. Just think of this as an impromptu swordsmanship lesson in Usan. You can pay us back by helping at my division's barracks, so go ahead with your fight. But Anohana-san Orium started. Go ahead with your fight. The captain interrupted, more sternly, making the two fighters cuddle with each other with fearful eyes. Nodding as they trembled in front of the frightening captain. Uriah vs Mayuri. All right. Need to focus. Uriah analyzed his situation. One captain and a lieutenant, one was obviously strong but there was nothing from the lieutenant at all. Start out slow, get a feel for his abilities. He thought, already firing several shots from multiple directions. Mayuri managed to dodge each one and join him on top of a wall while examining the damage. Very impressive. He said to the focused archer. That was Hirenkyaku, wasn't it? Impressive that a youth like you has mastered it to such a level. Flattered. But I always felt kind of slow in comparison to my cousin. Uriah said, staying cryptic about his and Ichigo's relation. But I was always the better shot. He disappeared again, firing from a distance and surprising the Quincy expert with the speed and power of the arrow. Licked Regan. Mayuri heard from above, before Uriah unleashed a barrage of arrows down on him. He landed and waited, sure that the captain managed to evade. Gathering Reishi at the shoulder for a great number of arrows fired in rapid succession. Mayuri said, looking closely at Uriah's left arm. Such fine condition too. A perfect specimen of the Quincy. He sneered at the archer. You've almost sparked my interest in your kind again. Uriah responded by quickly dissolving his bow and striking Mayuri twice. First with an elbow to his face and a palm strike to the center of his chest, pushing him back quite a bit. Those attacks are a lot stronger than his muscle structure would suggest. Mayuri thought, reeling back in pain. As interesting as your displays are, I would rather find that girl and begin researching her instead. Claw out. Ashisaji Jizu. He called while unsheathing his blade, making it turn into strange trident sword with a creepy golden baby face praying at the guard. Try not to die, I might want to dissect you later. Mayuri said, suddenly charging at him with the lieutenant suddenly running into the archer, letting the med scientist slash them both. Damn it. I let my guard down. He berated himself as they fell, wincing from the pain of the blade cutting through his flesh. How can he do this to his own subordinates? He wondered, remembering the grunts from earlier that almost died before Orium saved them. Why did she do this willingly? The lieutenant staggered before Mayuri punched her. Didn't I say to not let go even if your arm was cut off? He growled in fury. No matter, you served your purpose. He's beaten now. Uriah glared at the med scientist and tried to move his finger, only to find a complete lack of mobility in all of his limbs. Tranquilizers? Is that the effect of his Zanpakuto? Uriah tried to figure out what was happening. Maybe not. I can still feel the ground, so it might just be that my motor functions are disabled. Good thing I have just the counter. They heard the girl coughing and struggling to breath. You must have some iron will though. Mayuri said. That's a pretty substantial cut but you haven't cried out once. Not the first time you've been wounded by a blade. Uriah briefly flashed back to how his blood vein was trained. Yeah, I've been cut plenty of times. Uriah spoke in defiance. Training is not meant to be gentle. Interesting. He said as he raised his blade and Uriah prepared himself, until Mayuri got fed up. Be quiet Nimue. Forgive me, Master Mayuri. She gasped helplessly. Please give me some of the medicine. My lung seems to be damaged. she said, freezing the captain in a sense of indignant rage. He stomped over to deliver his vengeful fury when Uriah chipped in. That might not be completely unreasonable. That was a deep cut. Mayuri shifted his glare back to the downed Quincy. Aspiring doctor, Uriah said, explaining his concern. Do you think me an idiot? The captain roared, grabbing his lieutenant by her shiakusho and slamming her against the wall. Do you think a body I created will fail from this level of injury? He demanded, surprising Uriah. Wait, you made her? He asked, drawing upon what limited knowledge of Shinigami technology he had. Mixing Jigei and Jiken. Correct. Mayuri said, surprised by the Quincy's quick deduction. Mixing these techniques, I created this girl. My daughter, Nimyo Kuratsuki. He threw her to the ground. And I shall treat her however I please. The hell you will? Uriah growled, getting ready to attack the moment the captain drops his guard. Is this the pride of the Quincy crap your kind prattles on about? The captain asked, annoyed. It's the same every time. During all my experiments and studying of the Quincy. By the honor of the Quincy I won't do this, by the pride of the Quincy I won't allow that. It was so annoying until I finally killed those worthless subjects. Uriah was frozen, wondering how many of his kind suffered, or how many innocent lives this monster must have tortured. Getting viable specimens was always such a pain. Bribing the soul reapers that were watching the remaining Quincy to let them die, then recover the soul forms for experimentation. He dug out a small picture and tossed it to Uriah. The last worthless test subject I had. Kept screaming the names of his students or grandchildren. Everything else was mute to Uriah in that moment. On that picture, was his grandfather's mutilated body. The man before him was the one responsible for his grandfather's death. He glanced at the Sanrei glove, thoughts of murdering this man being the sole thoughts in his head. He wanted to rip off the glove, gain the unparalleled power of the Let's Still and reduce this man to ash. His nearly ripped it off when something deep in his mind rang out. Why do you fight Uriah? He heard his father's words echoing in his mind and he froze. Ichigo is trying to become stronger to face a terrible monster. One that will destroy everything. That is his reason to get stronger. What is yours? The words continued to ring, making him hesitate. That's right. He recalled. I'm doing this to help Ichigo. I promised not to do anything foolish. The fog of rage and hate was slowly clearing, letting him think rationally again. You're still looking out for me, even when you're not here. He smiled, devising a plan on crushing the man. He laughed. This is the results of your research. He said through his chuckles. Urahara could have made twice the discoveries with a fourth of the damage. He began laughing hysterically, fueled by Mayuri's rage-contorted face, knowing the history of the two. You're more of a butcher than a scientist. He said, watching the madman get closer. Because a real scientist would be ready for anything regarding his field of expertise. He growled before flashing in front of the captain and grabbing him by the throat, slamming him into a wall. What the, how? Mayuri questioned as the Quincy defied his Zanpakuto's ability. He then noticed the thousands of spirit threads wrapping around them both and the boy's glowing, bulging veins. Ranso Tenge. And he's channeling Ryotsu through his veins to increase his strength. He analyzed while pinned to the wall, marveling at the reveal of information he could study in spite of the danger he was in. Pride of the Quincy? Don't make me laugh. Uriah growled, using his mastery of the rare Quincy skill to immobilize his enemy. I don't give a damn about that pride and honor. What good was any of it if it nearly made an entire race go extinct? I only fight for what I believe in. He then brought out one of the seal schneiders on his waist and stabbed the man through the gut. Make no mistake, I want to kill you. He stared into Mayuri's eyes with cold hate. You murdered my grandfather, all because of some failing research instead of proving something by making the Quincy a viable ally to the Soul Reapers like we once offered. He brought up his black Quincy cross. Urahara made this. It lets me create bows and arrows that can purify hollows like a Shinigami's Zanpakuto, something you never thought to try. He created a small hand-sized bow and shot off the captain's leg. The air was filled with the sadist's screams of pain. I could pick any number of methods to kill you, but that wouldn't do anyone any good. He took hold of Ashisagi Jizo and impaled Mayuri with his own blade. I can feel another captain nearby. You can beg them for help, he said before Mayuri began to melt. How shameful indeed. The disembodied voice of Mayuri spoke out. To think I disregarded the possibility of the Quincy evolving. Though you've insulted me so much, I can't help but want to relish in studying your corpse when the other captains kill you. Uriah glared at the retreating slime. You'll be lucky if you face me again in battle, Kurotsuki. But pray my cousin never finds you or what you did. Uriah warned. Ichigo is far stronger than I am. Ichigo Kurosaki. Mayuri spoke in surprise. He's supposed to be descended from Soul Reapers. He is, on his father's side. The only sound left was the demented and elated laughter of the deranged man, relishing what experiments were already coming to mind. Freaking nutjob. Uriah grunted out before collapsing, being caught in someone's arms. That is interesting to hear, Ishida-san. Anohana said, gently lowering the boy to the ground. But more so impressive that you didn't kill him when you had the chance. She said, already beginning treatment on the downed Quincy. Why is that? It wouldn't have done any good. He said, seeing no point in lying to the woman that was healing him. He didn't have it in him to fight anyone at the moment. It wouldn't bring back my grandfather or the Quincy that died. And it would have made life that much more difficult for Ichigo and his mission. And that mission is? She asked cautiously, but Uriah already fell asleep. She smiled gently at the young archer. Lieutenant Kurotsuki, would you help? She asked the artificial Shinigami, whom she already healed. Yes, Captain. She said simply, grateful to the Quincy for some reason. Chapter 23, The Last Night of Peace. Squad 4 Barracks. The entirety of the Siridi was still in a state of panic and searches. The strongest of the Shinigami seemed to be failing against the Ryoka, and the most dangerous of them was still at large, putting most of the White City denizens in a state of frenzied confusion. The intruders that were captured were monitored closely and put to work with restraints on their powers. The able-bodied were brought to the Hospital of Soul Society under the watchful eye of one of the head captain's most loyal and trusted allies, Retsu Anohana. Please put those over there, Ganju-san. The serene captain requested of the thug, helping carry and deliver bandages and medical supplies. Before his capture, Chadziswold put a good number of Soul Reapers into the medical barracks, which were almost full with the members of Squad 11. Sato-san, these need to be in the OR. Ganju and Chad were designated to carrying and delivering supplies throughout the building. Yes, Inu-san. That looks good. Anohana took it upon herself to teach basic medic skills to Orium, who was changing and wrapping bandages under Anohana's watchful eye. Your power is wonderful, but very reliant on your mood. Use the basic skills for now. She advised the girl. Chad. What did you do to this guy? Asked Uriah, who was serving as one of the main doctor staff, currently treating the broken third seat of the 8th. He was in the way, so I pushed him. Sato said simply, carrying another patient to a different room. Through 5 walls. The Quincy clarified, already resetting the broken bones. I push hard. He replied, carrying an irate Squad 11 guy back to his room. As lively as it's ever been. The captain said with a smile, grateful for the extra hands helping out. Come along, Inu, I believe the next patient is a friend of yours. They wandered to the next room where Tatsuki was, wearing the battle dress of the Onmitsukido that Swafon gave her, with her arms in splints, and Swafon, who was looking oddly distracted. Hey Orium. Tatsuki beamed to her friend as the two entered the room. Tatsuki. Orium cheered as she hugged her friend, careful to avoid the fractured limbs. What happened? Internal bleeding, concussion, almost 100 broken bones, and, is that a wedgie? They heard from the next room. What the hell happened to Lieutenant Omada? The healing duo turned their attention on the fiery martial artist. He was peeking on me changing. She said with a shrug, making the girls nod in understanding. Anohana then made to depart. Well, I have some business to take care of. She told the ladies. Captain Swafon, you seem distracted. Would you like to take a walk through my division's garden? She offered, a sense of worry for the younger captain. And no, I'm fine. Swaifon defended. Besides, someone needs to watch the prisoners. We'll take care of that, captain. They all turned to see Yumichika, Ikeku, and a bandaged Zaraki coming in. Anohana smiled at the noticeable lack of his usual bells in favor of an unruly mess down the back. You go out and enjoy the beautiful flowers. The stealth force commander hesitated before finally taking the advice. Yumichika, go to that one playing doctor. Ikeku, help the other two with the supplies. Zaraki ordered. I'll stay here with the girls. The two men scrambled to follow their orders when another pair of Zaraki's subordinates came to plead with their captain to let them out. You are both still injured. You need your rest. Orium told the two, worried about their health. Listen here, Missy. They started. Please go back to your rooms. Orium pleaded using teary puppy eyes on the two, making them blush and leave, commenting that they did still hurt a little. Wonder how devastated they'll be when they find out you have a boyfriend. Tatsuki muttered, making Orium giggle. I'll keep an eye on them, you go about your duties. Zaraki told the healer, noting for the first time that the scar she gave him didn't even burn anymore. The woman glared at the brat twice her size, feeling her own scar ache though not as much, before leaving to perform her duties. With Hinamori, hours later. She was told that she could be discharged, that she was physically fine. The damage was minimal and they let her have an extended stay because of the trauma of watching her captain killed right in front of her. She admired him, such a gentle, caring man, showing compassion for all of his subordinates, protected them at their most vulnerable, and her hero. All the effort she put into rising in the ranks, to prove herself capable, worthy, and then he made her his lieutenant. She was filled with joy, loving the man like a father, worshipping him as a god. Then that Ryoka showed up, supposed to help save Rukia from an unjust execution, offered help from her saintly captain, only for him to reveal himself as a monster and kill that wondrous man that saved her. And she was unable to stop him. She had nothing but hate for that damned Ryoka that killed her beloved Aizen, that Ichigo Kurosaki. The second she woke up, realizing she wasn't having a terrible nightmare, she swore that she would kill him, no matter the cost. With that solitary thought, she dressed herself and took hold of her blade. Just where do you think you're going? She turned to see her childhood friend and captain of the 10th Division. It better be back to your squad. I have to find him, Toshiro. She said, seeing no point in lying to her oldest friend. I have to avenge Captain Aizen. Anyone could see the determination in her eyes, and Toshiro knew that it was a foolish endeavor. Ichigo Kurosaki is not your concern, Momo. He said bluntly. He's a captain's priority only. Stay out of it. Toshiro, he killed Captain Aizen. She screamed at him, trying to make him see her point, to let her attempt this suicide mission. Who then bested 4 lieutenants with little effort, put myself and Ichimaru on the defensive, defeated Kenpei Zaraki, and survived the captain commander himself. He said, reinforcing just how much of a threat the one Ryoka was. You're lucky to be alive right now. If you face him again, you will die. I know that. She yelled out. I know I don't stand a chance against him, but I have to do this. He killed my captain Toshiro, I have to avenge him. She pleaded with her oldest friend. If you really are my friend, you'd understand. I do understand, Momo. He said, stern but gentle. Make no mistake, I want to avenge Aizen as well, but you are incapable of doing so. Which is why I'm not asking you as a friend. I'm ordering you as a captain. She looked at him, shocked that he was denying her new life goal. Stand down, return to your division, restore order, and wait for further instructions. He began to leave just as she was about to protest. Your squad lost their leader. He froze her with a single statement, reminding her that the loss was not just affecting her. Don't take away the only one they have now. I'll kill Ichigo. He left her there, just as she collapsed into tears. He was walking through the halls of the 4th Division, his goal clear in his head when he came upon Anohana's office and asking her to keep an eye on Momo when he heard something shocking. What do you mean, Anohana-san? He looked inside to see Uri and Orium speaking with Anohana over Aizen's corpse. There is no body there. I thought as much. Anohana conceded, looking disappointed. We've been lied to. With Ichigo and Yuriuki hidden away from the eyes of Soul Society, underneath their very noses in a place known only to a few, Ichigo trained in the hidden training hall his masters used in their youth. For the added measure of security, he created a Kido barrier that was taught to him for training in secrecy, maintained now by Yuriuki because he needed to devote his full attention to his training. Yuriuki continued to watch the empty glowing space before her, the area Ichigo was training inside, knowing that what he was going through now was beyond most Soul Reapers. As she has come to expect out of the hybrid. For them this would be training for Bankai. She thought, gazing into the glowing nothingness as she held onto the charm that let her power the Kido spell. For you, this is merely enhancing your abilities. When his spirits manifested, they explained that keeping them manifested was extremely draining for anyone, but fighting a constantly stronger opponent that was familiar with all your skills was a whole other monster. That was Ichigo's training. She dropped the barrier's strength to the degree that she was able to see inside. Ichigo was clashing against both the old man and the hollow, each one holding a variant of Ichigo's current Shikai blade while he tried to fend off both attackers almost simultaneously. He utilized everything he could, Kido spells, Siros and Balis, Quincy attacks, all while switching out new blades with every sword break. Never once missing a step even with the damage he was taking. His body was a canvas, their blades were the brushes, and his blood was the paint. In light of all of this, she knew she was going to run out of Ryutsu before he was at his limit. He impressed her, terrified her, more of a monster than anything she's ever seen or heard. All for the power to protect. Hours later, her energy ran out and the barrier fell. You okay, Yuriuki? He asked, despite the horrific condition his body was in. Yeah, just need to rest. She panted as he helped her up after regrowing the arm he lost. You sure this'll work? She asked her student. It has to. Ichigo said. He'll have no other options than to act hastily. Yamamoto will kill you if this fails. She reminded him. Yeah, I know. Ichigo dismissed, already heading for the healing spring. He's agitated. She thought, watching him walk away. He knows what's at stake and he's prepared for it. A great battle was coming for them all. One that was spitting in the face of centuries of law and practice for the Shinigami, to prepare for a terrible war. And I know just the way to calm his nerves. Mine as well. She adopted a mischievous smirk. With Byakuya. It was the last night, Rukia's execution was tomorrow. He failed the woman he loved, lost her to illness, lost his parents, all he has left is his duty as a captain and his revenge. An empty existence, a living hell. Win or lose, after tomorrow, he would leave this life for whatever lay beyond. Soon Hisuna, I'll be with you soon. He prayed in front of the shrine dedicated to Beloved. It may be foolish, but I wish something will happen to save Rukia. Anything. A rare tear forming on his eye. With Yamamoto. He stood there, with his longest-serving and most loyal members of his squad, hearing the report from the healer. The words of the Ryoka cannot be trusted, Retsu. He said to his assembled advisors. But even then this is most concerning. When Ichigo attacks tomorrow, go to the Central 46 in the midst of the confusion. Find out personally what is happening there. The healer bowed in acknowledgement before he turned to his disciples. Are the preparations ready? Yes, sensei. Yukatake confirmed, unusually focused on the trial ahead. Never thought that this would ever happen. Shunsui admitted. Things are getting really hectic. After today, nothing will be the same. Yamamoto said, completely aware of the boy spying on them. Chapter 24, Beginnings of Revolution. Squad 4. Today was the day of the execution, Rukia's, and Ichigo's execution. Rukia the prisoner, and Ichigo, the fool that will try to rescue her. The various captains made their way to Execution Hill where the Sokyoku stood. Anohana and her lieutenant were walking through the medic barracks, making last checks before heading to the hill themselves. I'm really sorry about this, Inu-san. She said, feeling bad about the Ryoka's position in her barracks prison cell. After they helped with the influx of patients, they were all separated. Orium at her base, Sato at Squad 8s, Uriu and Ganja were at Squad 13s, and Tatsuki was back at the 2nd. Each under lock and key, separated from each other to prevent any more problems. "You're a nice girl. I'll see what we can do about your chances of freedom," she said, hoping to cheer the girl up. "It's alright, Anohana-san," Orium said with a smile. "I'm okay." She said that, but anyone could tell she was worried. It hurt the female captain, but she had a job to perform. They left the barrier maiden behind as they made for the execution stand. She was not shocked to find Kenpei Zaraki and his lieutenant waiting by the front gate. "Captain Zaraki?" she greeted. The man made a full recovery and still had his hair in that unruly mess down his back, giving Yachiru a better handhold to stay on his back. "Shall we go? You swear I'll fight Ichigo again?" he asked, demanding clarification. "This seems odd coming from you. If all goes as I suspect, you'll get plenty of chances to fight him again," she said as they started for the execution site. "Your other officers are patrolling?" she asked, not seeing his usual accompanying duo of his squad. "Yeah," he grunted. "They're making their rounds. Dismissing Ikeku and Yumichika, simply to gather and escort Ichigo's friends during the confusion of the coming fight." Anohana prayed that their suspicions were wrong. If not, war would be upon them. The first in centuries. In the corner of her eye, she saw Hanataro nod towards her and head back into the barracks. "Squad 8. It's not too uncomfortable, is it, Sato?" Kiraku asked the large teen. Reishi cuffs around his wrists kept him bound to the wall. "Yeah, those cuffs will keep you from using your powers. Meaning you can't enhance your strength to break out. Sorry about the lack of hospitality," he said, smirking to the giant. "It's alright. I've been in worst," Chad responded, already planning on his escape. "That's both good and sad to hear," the captain said, losing his grin. "You're such a great guy." He heard his lieutenant call him that they should get going. "Well, guess I'm off. Hey, Tatsufusa. Keep an eye on him," he called to his now recovered third-seated officer. "Yes, Captain." The man called out and sneered at Chad, a ring of keys dangling from his waist. "This is going to be easier than I thought," Chad thought to himself as he remembered the weakling, just barely. Squad 13. Uriah was spending the better half of the last half-hour banging his head against the wall as Ganju and the third-seat duo of the squad was fanning over the previous and deceased Lieutenant Kaien Shiba. He sounded a lot like Ichigo, but the endless praise and arguing about who was better in the former lieutenant's eyes was starting to grate on his last remaining nerves. "Let's go." They heard the tired call of the sickly captain as he came out with a large wooden shield with a crest on the face and a cord connected to a pole. Somehow his most fanatical subordinates didn't hear him in their argument with the Shiba man. He released an exhausted sigh watching the trio. "Hello, Izada-kun," he said to the Quincy that was still banging his head against the wall. "You have the key I gave you?" "Yep." Uriah let out, completely disconnected. "Is this what you deal with every day?" he asked. "Usually just the two of them, but yes," the man admitted. There was a pause to see if it was going to end any time soon. "My condolences," the Quincy said. "Thank you." Squad 2. Tatsuki was completely immobilized, every joint was locked in place and she was suspended from the ground. The days of her imprisonment gave the punishment squad enough of an idea on what to get to restrain her, and this was a time that they could afford no distractions like her running around causing havoc. They were familiar with the danger she presented. "Well, she's not going anyway anytime soon." Omada sneered at the girl that constantly humiliated him. "Looks like your special treatment is over." Tatsuki just glared at the man, acting so high and mighty despite his numerous losses to her. He was getting himself ready to leave with his captain when she showed up. "Omada, stay here and watch her," she ordered, a little too quickly from her usual attitude. "Wah." "But Captain Dash." He tried to protest. "No. You know as well as I do she's a dangerous target. I'm not taking risks with her," she said, noticeably distracted and agitated. Tatsuki noticed this and smirked. Still thinking about what I told you? She said teasingly. About why she left you behind. Swaifon glared at the empowered human, but said nothing as she left. Heading for the execution stand by herself. A prisoner shouldn't be so cheeky. Omada growled at the martial artist. If she gets hurt in any way, I will see you executed. He warned the girl. Oh, just watch me. She smirked confidently as she challenged him. I'll be getting out of here. With Jin. He was walking along the bridge of the repentance cell, seeking Rukia to mess with her a little. What he saw disappointed him. She was already gone. There was no light, no drive, no hope, just emptiness. Probably that scolding from that Shiba man and hearing that Ichigo essentially had a death sentence must have crushed her. She might as well be dead from if her expression was anything to go by. Maybe he could fish for a little something else. Hello there, Rukia. He said as the prisoner and escort reached him. Lovely day, isn't it? He got no response as she stood there lifelessly. Almost all of your would-be rescuers have been caught. They'll most likely be executed for this transgression, or be put in the maggot's nest if certain captains pull the right strings. Still nothing. Ichigo will definitely be put to the sword though. Maybe in the same way as you. Together in death, how touching. No response even now. You're no fun. Not even the littlest bit of faith in your rumored lover. He said before walking off. But then again, there might be truth in his claim that this is all a setup. He said, finally getting a shift in movement from her. But the backing of traitors is meaningless. He finished before leaving. He had to meet up with Aizen, and he was aware that he was being followed. Do try to live Kira. He thought to his lieutenant before flash stepping away. Sokioku Hill. Yamamoto stood there, overlooking the members of the Godei 13 that came in attendance to the execution stand. Lieutenant Izura was there in lieu of his captains, who was missing, Kuratsuka was still recovering, Swaifon had her lieutenant stay behind and guard Tatsuki, Yukatake was on his way, and Hichugiya was heading for the building of the Central 46 with his lieutenant with Hinamori apparently following them. He thought back to the promise that Ichigo boy made him. For your sake, you better be right boy. He thought, a curious gaze scanning the other captains and lieutenants. Zaraki was keeping an eye on the blind Tuan while Abarai seemed conflicted. Rukia was brought up to the execution stand. Time to begin. Let us commence the ceremony. He announced when Rukia was in place. Rukia Kukaki. Any last words? He asked the girl, almost expecting nothing from the depressed soul. Please. She finally whispered out. Please be as merciful as you can to them. She barely managed to whisper as tears began to form in her eyes. A sight that he had become hardened to, not by choice but by duty. There was no happy ending for her in sight, she had lost all hope. I will be as merciful as I can with them. He told her. You have my word. She merely let her head hang there. Release the Sokioku. He watched the seal come apart as she rose into the air. All this happening now, and the only thing he could think of was Ichigo Kurosaki, swearing his life to Soul Society if his accusations proved false. Flashback, 1st Division Barracks. The battle with Kenpei Zaraki ended and he waited for the hybrid to finally come to him. He heard a rustling in the room before his office and muffled speech from his longtime lieutenant. Suddenly he heard an incantation and the orange glow of a Kido barrier enveloped the building. The doors before him flew apart and revealed the battered and bloodied form of Ichigo Kurosaki, a state many would be lucky to find themselves in after a fight with the one called Kenpei. Hakijyo Sogai. Ichigo said, panting in exhaustion from pushing himself. Time and space displacement barrier. No one outside this Kido can see or hear us. He explained, slowly walking toward the captain as he rose from his seat. You storm into the afterlife, fight through an army of Shinigami, and seal us in an isolated space, just to come and speak with me. He said to the upstart child as he drank some glowing blue liquid and began to recover from his injuries. I will give you one chance to convince me to not strike you down. The sealed king of the Quincy. Over 900 years, he shall recover his heartbeat. Over 90 years, he shall recover his intellect. Over 9 years, he shall recover his power. And over 9 days, he shall recover the world. Ichigo told him, making the old man open his eyes. It's no myth, and war is coming to your doorstep. The old captain stayed silent as he regarded the boy, looking for any trace of lies and misdirection. But there was none to be found. You have my full attention, Ichigo Kurosaki. The boy nodded and closed the distance between the two before kneeling down and offering his blade. The old man took it as a sign of submission and allegiance. As he took the sword from the boy, Ichigo began his tale. My name is Ichigo Kurosaki, son of the Soul Reaper Hine Shiba and Quincy Masaka Kurosaki. 6 years ago, Iwak performed his holy selection and drained my mother of her power. On that day, my own powers have awakened and I swore vengeance against the Quincy King. He told the old man. I have come to warn you of the coming fight. And to offer what help I can. And your evidence, boy? The commander asked, hoping there was no evidence of that monster's return. His heart sank as Ichigo's Ryotsu flared and coalesced into the form of his ancient enemy as he appeared 1,000 years ago. This is most concerning. He said, years of battle and experience keeping him upright. They are not the immediate concern though, sir. Ichigo said, raising his head. Aizen plans to betray Soul Society. He looked back at the hybrid and waited for his explanation. Over 100 years ago, there were experiments on holification that affected then-captains, Shinji Hirako, Kensei Meguruma, Rose Odoribashi, and Love Ikawa, as well as Lieutenants Hiyori Saragaki, Mashiro Kuna, Lisa Yadomaru, and Hachigen Ushoda. The blame for these experiments were placed on Kisuke Urahara and Tessai Tsukabishi. This was a lie as Urahara was framed. Aizen performed those experiments with the aid of Jinichi Maru and Kaname-tuan, as named by Shinji Hirako and the other former captains. So they are alive. Genri Usai mused, processing the new information. What are their current states? If these fallen Soul Reapers were a threat, then they needed to be eliminated, but why is Ichigo just giving this information away? Aside from hollow powers, back to normal and stronger than the last time you saw them. Ichigo said. Their main interest is in destroying Aizen, but the news about Iwak is forcing their hand. What proof do you have that condemns 3 of my captains? He asked, almost believing the boy. Did you not kill Aizen already? I did not. Ichigo admitted. He managed to escape me at the last second, and he was holding back. As for evidence, I have none but a suspicion of what Aizen is after. Urahara created an object called the Hogyaka which should break the boundaries between Shinigami and Hollow. When he fled a century ago, he took it with him with attempts to destroy or seal it. I suspect that the Hogyaku is currently hidden inside of Rukia's body. Is there anything here that could extract it? Extract, no. The old man grumbled. Leave behind, yes. The Sokyoku, the harshest punishment of Soul Society. With its great power, it would burn away a soul, but not anything foreign. Especially if this Hogyaku is as indestructible as you say. It's also what Rukia has been sentenced to die by. By whose orders? Ichigo asked, rising from his bow. The Central 46. Yamamoto admitted, some actions the past few days started to make sense to the grizzled old man. But how would Aizen be able to fake his death and control the governing body of Soul Society? His Zanpakuto, Kyoka Suijutsu. Ichigo claimed. Shinji told me that Aizen explained his ability of complete hypnosis. Anyone that sees his Shikai is under his illusion. Here's what I propose. Go along with Aizen's plan, but destroy the Sokyoku. He might have a plan B that will make him move personally. I'll fight at the hill, while you have someone head to the Central 46 and double-check whether or not Aizen is there. A rather loose but still sensible plan. And if you are wrong? The commander asked. The boy gave him that same look of unshakable determination. Then you can have my life. He said fearlessly. The boy actually impressed the ancient captain. He saw a power and will that hasn't been present for centuries. He decided to give this boy a chance. Right or wrong, this boy was needed in the future. He could feel that he would be an invaluable ally if he was allowed to grow in power. Very well. But if this ruse is going to work, then I'm going to have to smack you around. He told Ichigo, flaring his own power. Ichigo unconsciously took a step back before standing his ground. "Don't worry about me, Yamaji. I'm not a weakling," he said, taking back his blade. "You may regret that," he said, revealing his blade. "Reduce all creation to ash," he spoke, echoing with power. Ryujinjaka. Ichigo immediately regretted his boast as the man slammed a fist into his gut, filling the air with a sickening crunch and launching him out of the barrier, breaking it apart and sending a wave of flames at him. He finished it off by pointing at him and launching the level 91 Hado spell, Senjukuten Teiho. He managed to escape, only because he was saved. Flashback end. So now here they were. Rukia was in front of the Sokyoku, now a blazing phoenix ready to destroy anything in its path. His own students, loved as his sons, now helping him to break the laws and peace he swore to uphold on the words of an outsider, trained by people with no strong ties to Seoul society. The biggest gamble in his 2,000 years of life, 1,000 years as Captain Commander, with the only payment being a boy's life should it fail in the end. But based on Anohana's report of the Ryokan not seeing Aizen's corpse in the morgue and her own admission of feeling something was not right about it almost guaranteed the hybrid's claim. The Firebird reared back and thrust toward Rukia, only to be stopped by a single figure. "Now show me what you can really do, my next disciple," thought Yamamoto as he made up his mind about what to do with Ichigo's allegiance. Everyone's escapes. Squad 8, Chad. "Do you see that Ryoka?" The third seat sneered at the giant, taking pride at the payback he could deliver for his earlier humiliation. "The Sokyoku has been activated. Your little rescue attempt has failed." Chad moved in recognition of the name. The lieutenant told him to escape when the Sokyoku was released. Guess now was the time. "Is that so?" Sato asked, almost lazily. "Guess I'd better get going." He straightened himself up and pulled against the chains, tearing them out of the wall. He didn't break stride as he went towards the prison bars and tearing them out before tossing the door aside. "Now give me the keys to my cuffs," he told the now trembling third seat. Squad 13, Uryu. Uryu was watching the hill with the massive spear, waiting for the telltale sign they agreed on to move out. Ganja was busy grumbling about him being his brother's favorite, as he had been doing for the last half hour. The moment he saw activity, he vehemently thanked every god he thought existed and spat out the key Yuka-take gave him earlier. He swiftly freed himself from the cuffs and manipulated his spirit threads to grasp hold of one of his seal schneiders to cut their way to freedom. Once he was finished with that, he was going to announce their freedom to Ganju, who was still ignorant and grumbling to himself. He released a sigh before holding Ganju's hands and cutting of the cuffs with his chainsaw blade. He still wasn't getting a reaction, so he dragged him out of the cell and punched him in the eye, really hard. "AHH. What the hell, man?" he screamed out after falling to the ground. "Why did you, wait, when did we get free?" he asked the Quincy. "I've been breaking out for the last 5 minutes. Now come on," he ordered the Shiba man. "Ichigo's gonna need our help." Squad 4, Orium. She sat in her cell, humming away a tune while daydreaming about life after they all leave Seoul society. With Rukia finally joining in the group, it could be a lot more fun. She could match Tatsuki's strength and confidence while enjoying the fun and cuter things she was into. Thoughts drifted slowly to what their dates might end up looking like, turning into a fantasy of Ichigo as a cold-cut gangsta with the three of them hanging on his body possessively as he walks through his territory, switching over to what would be their nighttime activities. She was trapped in her little fantasies, ignorant of Hanataro standing in the same spot, sweeping with the keys to cuffs and prison doors, hanging loosely on his waistband, or Yumi Chika coming in. "The Sokyoku is already activating, what's keeping you two?" he asked, somewhat annoyed that they haven't left yet. "I don't know Yumi Chika, sir." Hanataro whimpering. "I've been here for 10 minutes, but she won't move." They turned to look at the barrier maiden, who seemed to be shining with serenity in her daydreams. So beautiful, a maiden in love with dreams and thoughts of love. The fifth seat said in awe of the vision before him. Just take the moment to witness and appreciate such a rare beauty as a maiden, happy and in love, he said, practically singing hymns of praise to Orium's goddess-like beauty in that moment, soon ruined by her giggling perversely with a grin to match. The two men's sweat dropped at the sight. Yumichika felt the need to take a shower. Should I still be watching? The short medic asked tentatively. The flamboyant man simply let out a saddened sigh. Let's just get her out of there, he said, lamenting the loss of such a pure image. Squad 2, Tatsuki. Tatsuki was hanging there, completely restrained with that oversized Ofomada watching her. He was determined to show his worth as the lieutenant of the 2nd Division. Tatsuki had shaken the unbreakable will of his captain and made her distracted and hesitant. He wanted to be there and watch her back, but her orders were final and he would serve them to the letter. He was not letting Arisawa out of his sight. He was even skipping his snack and meal time to perform this one solitary mission. The two were glaring at each other the entire time this went on, waiting for the other to crack. Tatsuki then felt what she was waiting for and decided to help with a little distraction. I'm actually surprised that you've stayed there this long, Tatsuki said dryly. But you might want to move. Huh. Your mind games won't work on me, Arisawa, he boasted. There is no way you're getting out of my dash, he said before the ceiling above him caved and Ikeka dropped down on top of him with a smack of the blunt end of his Hojikamaru, sending Omada crashing into the wall. He just isn't lucky, is he? Ikeka quipped before working to free Tatsuki. Seriously, people that piss off my captain are treated better than this guy. You mind if I slap him around a little bit? She asked as she stretched and rolled her joints, stiff from their captivity. Pretty sure he was staring at my chest, she said, looking down at her chest. Well, it could be a little revealing from the right angle, he said, looking away with a slight blush. Yeah, but I mostly wanna punch him some more, she said before heading over to the waking lieutenant. Really unlucky, Ikeka muttered in sympathy as Tatsuki returned to beating the man. With Toshiro. The execution has started, he said, looking at the shine of fire and light from the execution hill. He was running out of time. He needed to see for himself whether Aizen was a traitor or not. He was suspicious of Jin even after the man tried to save his life, but Aizen couldn't possibly be the traitor. Could he? Come on, Rangiku. We have to hurry, he said before running toward the legislative building, completely unaware of his oldest friend following him. Toshiro. What happened to killing Ichigo? She wondered as she shadowed him. Chapter 25, The Battles Begin. Sokioka Hill. The assembly of captains and lieutenants watched in shock and awe at the upstart Ryoka holding back one of the most powerful weapons of the Shinigami with frightening ease. The oldest among the captains were merely surprised and impressed by the boy that earned their commander's trust. Zaraki felt his grip tighten and his new scar burn with excitement. This is impossible, yelled Swafon, finding it hard to accept the reality before her. There you are, Kurosaki, Byakuya thought venomously, ready to fight the boy to the death if needed. So he is the one that's dared to erase my sin. Anohana reflected in shock at the boy. He might just do it. She glanced at her current successor, who couldn't stop grinning manically and trembling in excitement. He even makes my blood boil. Just how powerful is he? If you couldn't do this much, I'd be disappointed, Yamamoto thought. Jushiro should be here soon with the Shihaurin shield. How long will you last? He questioned as the phoenix tried to push off of Ichigo's large blade. The young hybrid responded by twisting around and throwing the massive firebird off balance. Just as it righted itself, Ichigo coated his fist with enough reishi that it looked like a massive fang, and then he punched the Sokioka with so much force that it flew back a few meters. That's more like it, he thought approvingly. Form could use a little more work though. With Ichigo. The day of the execution came, time for him to act. Yuriyuki gave him a cloak that enabled him to fly and he made his way up the side of the hill, completely undetected in the wake and flames of the Sokioku. When he saw Rukia held in front of that massive phoenix, he immediately put himself between it and her. He grunted from the effort but didn't budge an inch. He was going to boast about saving her, say something cool or heroic, but the words died in his throat when he saw her. Not the proud and confident Soul Reaper he partnered with in the living world, but a blank empty shell. It hurt to see her like this, the way he could have been if Zanjutsu didn't stop him from giving in to despair. He felt the flame bird move, so he turned and swung his blade to twist the massive creature. He coated his fist in his Ryotsu and threw a punch, right in the creature's beak. "Get Chuga!" he called out, his punch turning into a black fang and sending the creature back. He turned back to Rukia and pulled her free of the execution, destroying her restraints, to stand on top of it. "Hey Rukia!" he said, hoping to get a response. It seemed to register with her as she slowly responded. "Ichigo," she muttered, apparently not altogether just yet. How to get her back? He wondered, completely unconcerned with the rising phoenix, or the various captains that wanted to kill him. "I got it. Your chappa drawing sucks," he told her, and was suddenly slapped really hard as a result. "How dare you!" she yelled at him indignantly. "Orium thinks my drawings are adorable, you uncultured cur." After she finished yelling, she realized a few things. Ichigo was in front of her, they were on top of the execution platform, they were surrounded by captains and lieutenants, and she wasn't dead, yet. "Ichigo. Glad to see you too, rookie dash." She punched him in the stomach, managing to knock the wind out of him with the surprise punch. "Why did you even come?" she yelled. "You can't fight up against the entire Godi I-13 and expect to dash." She stopped when Ichigo grabbed onto the back of her neck. "Shut up," he said before capturing her lips in a deep kiss. Her eyes were open in surprise, then bugged out in shock as he quickly dominated her mouth and making her melt in his arms. "With your Yuki." "Nice," she said from her vantage point, ready to start her long-awaited match with her favorite little bee. "But 15 hits on a 10-second kiss? You can do better than that, Ichigo." "With Kiraku?" "Well, that's one way to keep someone quiet," thought Kiraku as he watched the display, his lieutenant blushing next to him. "I take it I'm late." He turned to see his oldest friend finally arrive with the shield, but the Sokioka was not attacking again, yet. "So that's Ichigo," he said, finally seeing the leader of the Ryoka in the flesh. "I dare say Rukia is finally fulfilling a fantasy right now." "Yeah." Kiraku agreed. She could have hidden that crush of hers better. "With Renji." "Amazing," thought the tattooed lieutenant. "Even now the gap has only widened between us. In strength and courage," he lamented, never having the courage to admit his own feelings to anyone, even himself. "If it makes her happy, then fine. Good luck, Ichigo. You'll need it." He then glanced to his captain, whose eye was twitching in the most subtle way possible. "Because I have never seen Captain Kukai this mad before." "With Ichigo. That should do it," Ichigo thought as he pulled back, a trail of saliva between him and Rukia, to see her still red face and dazed eyes, and became a ragdoll in his arms. "Claims to have lived 10 of my lifetimes. You'd think she was kissed at least once before." The moment was ruined by a loud screech of the Sokioku, readying itself for the next strike. He straightened himself out and started spinning his Zanjutsu's released form by the cloth on the tang, creating a blur of white and black. "Bring it," he challenged, gathering his Reishi into the blade as he charged his signature blade skill. "Get Chuga." He let the length of the cloth extend to match the distance between him and the monstrous bird, Tensho. He yelled out, bringing the strike down across the phoenix and tearing a massive gash in its body. At the same time, a cable wrapped around the body of the great blade as Kiraku and Yukatake performed the ritual to destroy the Sokioku. "Oh come on!" Zanjutsu cried out. "I could have taken that oversized toothpick." "This is the plan, deal with it." The Quincy manifestation scolded. "If it wasn't for the fact that I can manifest you guys physically, I'd think I was going insane," Ichigo thought as the Sokioku exploded in a flash of light. Ichigo took the chance of momentary confusion to scope out what allies he had down there. Yamamoto was out as he needed to prove Aizen's guild first. The two captains weren't an option because they must be who the old man picked and must used for the ruse. Kenpei was Kenpei, so hell no. Leaving only one choice, the man that begged Ichigo to save Rukia. The tattooed lieutenant standing right next to the man glaring at him with the intent to kill. "Not a problem there, Ichigo," Rukia muttered, having come to consciousness, before Ichigo pulled her into a bridal carry. "What are you dash?" she tried to ask as Ichigo flash-stepped in front of Renji and slammed his foot into Byakuya, sending him flying. Take her and run. Now. Ichigo ordered, passing Rukia off to the tattooed man. Right. He said, still in shock at everything he witnessed. Right. He started running away from the assembly of captains and lieutenants, trusting Ichigo to keep them off their back. All the lieutenants that were not in the know looked at their colleague in shock before Swaifon gave the order to chase after Renji. However, Lieutenants Izuru, Iba, and Hisagi were more focused on payback for their humiliation as Ichigo stood between them and Renji. They were joined by Isane and Squad 1's Kojiro Sasakaibe. The lieutenants charged at Ichigo, and just when the giant masked captain of the 7th tried to warn them, Ichigo appeared behind the group of lieutenants, all of whom were sent flying back by swift punches and kicks. So fast. The masked figure gasped in shock, almost unable to keep track of the boy. No wonder he's a captain's only opponent. He growled, ready to take on the boy before he felt a hand grasp his wrist. Don't you dare, Komamura. Kenpei growled. This is not your fight. Even through the mask the berserker could feel the larger figure demanding answers in his gaze. Kukaki's called dibs on this. He said, just as Byakuya reappeared and tried to attack the Ryoka. Anyone that can see this is a personal matter of honor for him. I may love fighting, but even I don't get involved in another man's fight. Not this kind. A brute like you having a sense of honor. Kaname asked, surprised, and on guard. Of justice. Hell no. Kukaki will never shut up if you interfere. That's all. The scarred warrior told them. Now let's go. The lieutenants are down and the traitors escaping. He told them as they all charged toward Renji and Rukia. With Yamamoto, Kiraku, and Yukatake. Well, that's happening. Kiraku commented, watching the 3 captains charge off. And it's only getting worse. He turned to see Swaifon attacking the 3rd seat duo of the 13th that Yukatake brought with him. Jushiro, we should go. He said, grabbing onto his old friend. You too, growled the commander, this act of treason is inexcusable. He yelled, subtlety hinting in an old gesture known only to them to get moving. I will have to punish you both personally. He roared just as the 2 finally stepped away, aiming for a safe distance. So it begins. He thought before heading to where they were jumping to. With Swaifon. Treason is unforgivable. She yelled, silently berating herself for that foolish order earlier. Kian was under her foot, having her lungs crushed under the great strength of the petite captain. Before she could continue, she was tackled off of the hill by a masked assailant. Hey! Who do you think you are? She demanded. You were always excitable, but you seem a little distracted. The masked figure teased as she removed her coverings. Hey there, Swaifon, I missed you. Shed said with a cocky grin. Why, you're Yuaki. She gasped. All at once, a flood of memories and emotions hit her. The sense of betrayal and hate from when she left, anger that drove her to get as strong as she could, and a sliver of hope that what Tatsuki said was true. All this as they continued their fall into the forest below. With Anohana. She was sitting on the beast form of her Zanpakuto, flying toward her division to drop off most of the defeated lieutenants. Her own lieutenant and Sasakaibe were the least injured as he was privy to the plan. He still had several fractured ribs, but he and Yamamoto knew enough healing Kido to fix that problem. Now was time for her mission, letting Hitsugaya get into the C-46 chambers first to act as an unknown variable to let Aizen think he's still in control, if he is a traitor. If he was, she would stop him. She passed over where her successor was already distracting Tuan, as evidenced by the big black dome. Don't kill him yet, Zaraki. Not until we get definitive proof. She thought as she continued their flight in silence. Earlier with Kenpei. The 3 were making their way toward Rukia and Renji, Zaraki keeping up with the other 2 on pure running strength instead of flash step. Tuan slowed himself down to sustain a conversation with the one man he thought would threaten the peace and the last to side with justice. This was odd of you, Zaraki. He said, getting a curious glance from the one-eyed man. I always figured you for a brute and the last to care about justice and honor. Of course I don't care about any of that crap. He said before quickly slamming his fist into Kaname's face and stopping the chase. I just figured that was the best way to get you out of the way. Kaname. Komamura yelled, watching his friend fly into a building with the force of the strike. Zaraki! He roared in anger, unsheathing his blade to strike at the scarred man. Years of fighting and experience allowed him to catch the larger captain's hand and wrist and throw him toward his friend. I'm actually surprised you two didn't hear anything about it, he said as the two captains prepared to fight as he unsheathed his worn-chipped blade. Kenny and Ichi are friends now. Yachiro chirped from her place on Kenpei's back. Kenny fights alongside Ichi, and Ichi will fight Kenny as much as he wants. Yeah, basically. He agreed before telling the small girl to wait on the sidelines. Ichigo wants to save her, I want to fight him again, so I have to protect her. The only way you two are getting past me is if I'm dead. Tuan was the first to stand up. I always knew you would destroy the peace we worked so hard to maintain, he said, unsheathing his blade to prepare for the coming fight. As a man of peace and a captain of the Godi 13, your very existence is unforgivable. For the sake of justice, you must die. Bankai! He called, placing a hand on the ring on the tsuba of his blade, making it grow in multiple, sending them around the two combatants while Komamura got out of the attack's range. The rings created a vacuum of darkness that removed almost all of Kenpei's senses as the Bankai enveloped them both. Suzumushi Sui Ishiki, in Makoragi, he said, finalizing the technique. Welcome to this Mumayo Hell Zaraki, where all senses of sight, scent, sound, and Reishi sense become numb. Are you afraid? He said as he slashed the man before him. Any warrior, no matter how skilled, will feel fear when deprived of their senses so suddenly. Zaraki tried to move before getting slashed again as Tuan kept moving. It's useless. You are too slow to counter me. Your loss of senses will be the desh, he tried to boast when Zaraki almost struck him. What the, how? He questioned, feeling concern when he was in his element. I don't know if you can hear me, or if I'm even making a sound. Zaraki said, not hearing himself but feeling himself speaking. But you just missed your one chance to kill me. Kaname felt himself grow more and more afraid. You wouldn't understand it, but let me tell you something. What it means to be the Kenpei. Tuan made another strike, that he managed to keep from becoming fatal and made his counter-attack which missed, but barely. The Kenpei is one who cannot fall in battle, the greatest warrior of the 13 court guard squads. One that has fought countless battles and earned countless victories. To that end, I have lived for fighting. The one thing that excites me, makes my blood boil. Throughout all those countless fights, I have something you will never understand. Instinct. He said as he dodged and countered again. Instinct that keeps me focused, helps me adapt, even if I can only feel the sharp edge of your blade. He told Tuan, shocking the blind man at the revelation that the demon in human skin was figuring out the one weakness of his Bankai. That one thing is more than enough for me to control this battle. But, as much as this bores me, it suits my needs just fine. He said, dodging the next, sloppy, attack and grabbing hold of Tuan's hand and hilt. I'm supposed to keep you occupied, traitor. What? Kaname froze. His technique failed to let him kill this monster before him. However, the accusation surprised him more. What do you mean? I mean, you are suspected of treason. Ichigo told the old man, who told Anohana, who asked me to keep you occupied. Zaraki explained. She'll go to the Central 46. If she finds Aizen alive, you are guilty of treason. The blind man began to shake at the revelation of the ruse coming undone, after more than a century of planning, all because the old man took a chance to trust Arioka. I couldn't care less what was going on, but it looks like the claims are true. He said, before kicking the man in the gut and sending him back, returning to those empty senses. Now you have two choices. Dispel your Bankai and use what time you have to try and catch Rukia, just to gamble on the chance that I won't be able to cut off your legs. Or try your luck in here, where your chances of hitting me grow slimmer by the second. There was a pause as Kaname weighed his choices. Or till I get bored, then I'll just break your legs. The realization dawned on him, there was no chance for him to win. Wait, there's still Komamura. He remembered as he went after Zaraki again. He doubted his friend would abandon him against a foe like Zaraki, so he decided on that gamble. As expected, Zaraki caught him again, slashed him down the middle. Enough to slow him down, not enough to kill him. The Bankai dispelled a second later. "I told you," he said, throwing the injured swordsman to the ground. "Try to run and I'll cut off your limbs." He roared as he brought his blade down, only to be blocked by the arm guard and helmet of Komamura. Tuan took the chance to run, losing precious seconds because of his injury. "Oh yeah, forgot about you," Zaraki said as the helmet broke apart. "I thought you would have gone after the girl." The face revealed underneath was that of a wolf. "So that's what was under that mask. You're not afraid?" the wolfman asked, unsheathing his blade. "The only thing I'm afraid of is never finding a worthy opponent or losing what ones I find." He prepared for the new fight. "Your looks are the last things I care about. Of course you would only have such shallow interests," he said, flaring his riotsu. "Be warned, I'm not as kind as can aim. I'll meet you in your path of carnage and kill you for your crimes against the peace. I'm just acting on the old man's orders," he said lazily, making the beast man pause. "What?" he growled, shocked that Yamamoto would give any such orders for Zaraki's actions. "Tuan is suspected of treason," he explained, annoyed that he had to do it a second time. "Anohana is off trying to verify the evidence against him. I was supposed to keep him busy till then." "You're lying," Komamura roared. "Tuan would never betray Soul Society." "Bankai!" he yelled out, summoning his massive puppet. "Kokyujo Tenjin Myo! I will kill you for your accusations!" he yelled, refusing to believe that his friend was a traitor as he swung his blade, the giant armored figure copying him. "Have it your way!" he roared in response, blocking the attack with the area around them cracking under the pressure. With Swaifon and Yoriyuki, they were already fighting, one-on-one. The moment they landed and separated, she immediately ordered the assassination unit of the Onmitsukido to evacuate. She was not interested in taking chances, not interested in letting any moment of pause distract her from her duties. Fact, Yoriyuki is considered a criminal and a traitor for abandoning her post. Fact, her mission was to apprehend Yoriyuki. Fact, she hated her for leaving her behind all those years ago. Fact, Tatsuki telling her that Yoriyuki left her behind for her sake nearly crushed her resolve. No. She denied, focusing on her fight, furiously exchanging punches and kicks to the other. "She's a traitor. Not my lady anymore. I must kill her," she thought, managing to send her flying back with a kick. "I'm not that weak little girl that looked up to you," she charged, tears starting to form in her eyes as Tatsuki's words echoed in her mind. She ran because of a false charge on her allies. The words reverberated in her head, remembering Kisuk and Tessai. "She left you because she didn't want you to become a criminal for her sake. She loved you too much for that. Shut up. She abandoned me. She left me." She raged against the traitorous memories as her movements became sloppy. "She wouldn't leave me behind out of concern. She would have told me if there was something going on. She would have trusted me," she thought as Yoriyuki continued to block, looking at her old protege with a concern that Swaifon was blinded to in her frenzy. With Yamamoto and others, they sat, watching, and feeling the battles around them begin. Most of them were enjoying tea, Sasakaibe and Naneo competing over who made the better tea, while the head captain and Kiraku had some sake instead. He remarked that the events and possible revelations to come put his nerves on edge for the first time in a long while. He must have really angered Kukaki for him to go that hard right off the bat. Kiraku commented, pouring his old teacher another cup. "He is strong and a dedicated warrior, but he will not beat that boy," Yamamoto said as the two warriors clashed in the distance. "He has grown overconfident and complacent in his power. As a noble and a captain who's had centuries of training to hone his skills, he cannot believe that a human with Shinigami powers could ever really match him. In his eyes, Aizen didn't try to fight and Zaraki is a mindless brute." He took a drink to calm himself. He has long had the power to back his arrogance, but Ichigo will test that mettle. And he will break it. Watch him well, Shunsui, Jushiro. Right or wrong, that boy will be my next disciple. He has too much potential to just waste. he said, and to hell with the C-46 if they try to stop him. This boy would be their ace against the Quincy's. Ichigo vs Byakuya. Their blades were locked against each other, the massive Zanjutsu and the unreleased Senbonzakura, as both warriors glared at each other. Byakuya, with hate and anger, and Ichigo, with will and determination. They separated and clashed a few more times. Byakuya, why didn't you try to save your sister? Ichigo grunted against his opponent's strength. She was ordered to die by the law I swore to uphold. He growled back, losing his cool against the man that failed him, and defiled his sister, but mostly failed him. I vowed to follow and never break the law on my parents' grave. Even if that meant killing your sister. Ichigo demanded. You were supposed to clear her name. Byakuya roared in anger. I'm bound by my word, so you were all the hope I had left. You would clear her name, take your sentence, and she would be free. But now, all of Seoul society wants her dead. Her fate is sealed and it's all your fault. He pointed the tip of his blade to the ground. And I swear, I will kill you for this. Bankai. He released his blade, creating a tunnel of massive katanas which collapsed into petals. Senbonzakura Kage Yoshi. Huh. Ichigo noted as the swarms of petals moved. This might be fun. Check the description for the links to the author.